teaching meter through a world music classroom. Lina Tabak is an assistant professor of music theory at Indiana University's Jacobs School of Music. She received her Ph.D. from the CUNY Graduate Center, which analyzed relationships between rhythm, perceived meter, and stylistic expertise in 3 Colombian folk genres. This work was awarded the 2023 SMT-40 Dissertation Fellowship. Yes, and a preliminary version of one of her chapters won the 2020 SMT Student Presentation Award. She previously taught music theory at NYU and Brooklyn College. Welcome, Lina.
So thank you so much for being here today. I hope you're caffeinated. I have no idea whether this is going to last 3 hours. It might last a little bit less than that. Definitely not more than that, though. Yeah, today I'm going to be talking a little bit first about this class that I planned at IU called Rhythm and Meter in the Global 20th Century, and some exercises that I used in that class and that I've used in some other of my teaching in the past. Then we're going to listen to a bunch of Pacific Colombian music, which is the kind of emphasis of my research. And then we'll have some time for discussion, and we'll talk at the end, basically. So today I'm basically going to share some of my approaches to this particular class, focusing repertoire-wise much more than I do in that class on the specific Colombian music. And I'll be asking you guys to role play as undergraduates. So don't be offended. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence, but we'll just we'll act like undergraduates today. I'm glad to be presenting today, actually, in the last day of the conference, because we'll be building off of some things that Adam and especially Jocelyn were talking about yesterday. All right, so let's get started. As we've been discussing throughout this weekend, the increasing breadth of repertoires discussed in music theory classrooms can cause some challenges to arise, both for the instructor and for students. Instructors aim to find sufficient resources to address a potentially wide range of additional repertoires, and students aim to memorize seemingly unrelated information between potentially disparate musical traditions. So music theory class becomes more like a memorizing terms class rather than a music theory class that digs deep into music. With this focus on world musics, whatever that means specifically, these problems are easily exacerbated. There may be very few resources for instructors, and there may be very significant differences in musical conceptions and vocabulary between traditions, which students may then be asked to learn and get rapidly overwhelmed by. I find that centering a class or unit on rhythm and meter is one way to sidestep some of these larger issues that arise, while allowing for a very wide range of repertoires to be included. Here are some of the benefits that I see. First, the cognitive basis for metric perception seems to imply some universality in the experience of meter. See the asterisks there? We can fight about the asterisks all day, and maybe we will. Although many cognitive studies do primarily have Western conservatory music students as the primary participants, there are also many cross-cultural studies in meter perception, which show that the processes through which humans perceive meter are largely the same across cultural differences, although stylistic expertise and musical experience may have some more specific effects on which meter you perceive and why. In addition to these cognitive studies, many music theorists studying world music seem to generally agree that meter works the same or similarly across cultures, even if vocabulary to describe it is different or missing altogether in a particular culture. I can provide citations if you would like. Second, and seemingly contradictory, but actually still supporting my main point, meter is a deeply personal and perceptual phenomenon. Unlike pitch and harmony, which may be more readily said to have its perception encoded in some way in the sound of music, its frequencies and so on that you can see in the spectrogram, meter is perceptual and may not be seen in a score or a spectrogram or whatever other representation you might have. Two different people or groups of people may perceive two different meters when listening to the same music. And of course, we saw this a lot in yesterday's workshop by Jocelyn. And we may keep observing it today. Thus, meter is both seemingly a universal-ish cognitive process, while the specifics of metric perception may be deeply individualistic and differ between people. So from these ideas about meter, I developed this class at IU, which I titled Rhythm and Meter in the Global 20th Century. The overarching theme of my class is as follows. Given certain seemingly universal-ish constraints on how humans perceive meter, how do you perceive it as a student and why? Maybe this rings a bell. Said a little bit differently, one of the goals of the class is to balance one's own perception, other people in the class's perception, and practitioners' perceptions of of meter and kind of navigating between these different hearings and interpretations. Here is an overview of my curriculum of this course. We begin with essentials about metric organization for 7 weeks, and then after these basics, which fundamentals, cognition, hypermeter, isochronous meter, or irregular, asymmetrical, however you want to call it, rhythmic dissonance, microtiming, changing meter, and A meter. So after these kind of fundamental 7 weeks, the rest of the semester is more of a show and tell, where you have individual case studies in each week, or however many days or weeks you'd like to spend on someone, or some place, or some genre. And so then you can bring in all of these additional things. You're talking about art music, folk music, and pop music for the entire time from all around the world. It's just that in these first 7 weeks, you're not focusing on any one particular tradition. And then in the later on, you can get kind of dig deep into the specifics of a particular composer, tradition, style, etc. All right. So while in the actual class, as I said, I go between the art music, folk, and pop music from around the world during these opening 7 weeks. Today, I will only use examples of folk music from the Pacific Colombian coast, and we'll just do a little crash course on what the first 4 weeks might look like of this particular class. A few clarifications and disclaimers before we start this crash course. First, this is a 5th semester sequence. This is the 5th semester of the theory sequence at IU, the first 4 semesters of which are extremely traditional courses, focusing on diatonic and chromatic tonal harmony. This 5th semester is now a variable topics course on music of the 20th century, so students can choose to take either, for example, a sets and serialism class, a pop music analysis class, my class, or anything else that professors decide is framed around 20th century somehow. Second, and maybe implied by the 4-semester sequence on classical harmony, IU's Jacobs School of Music is basically a conservatory housed within a large university. So although a huge plus of a class centered around metric perception is that scores are not necessary and that you can talk about your perceptions without them and bring in more repertoires that way, IU students are expected to be very comfortable with staff notation, so a lot of the things that I'll be showing you today are based in staff notation. And will rely at least partially on the 5-line staff. But hopefully from what we already thought of yesterday, and as we're going through this, you can think about ways that you might alter some of these things that are represented in this way for your own student populations or different student populations as necessary. All right, and now disclaimer / clarification number 3. At the beginning of today, I'll be sidestepping a lot of issues in the beginning of the workshop, such as the big one, whether transcription is appropriate for this repertoire. And the second big one, whether it's appropriate to be using Western terminology or Western music theory vocabulary to describe non-Western music and other similarly large issues. We'll have a chance to discuss some of these broad issues in more depth near the end of the workshop as well. And I hope that you feel that you'll be able to have those conversations in your actual classes as you see fit. But in the beginning of today, I'll assume that you've had these conversations with your students and decided that Western style transcription is either a useful tool or something that your students need to be comfortable with, and that for the sake of all speaking within one language in the classroom, we will choose Western music theory language to describe the things that you are perceiving in music. We can talk about, we'll talk about it. Okay, actually, since there's not that many of us here, also I'll say just interrupt me and raise your hand at any time and we can have conversations throughout. So maybe I'll actually pause right now and we can, if there are any questions or thoughts that you guys have before we get started. Obviously I'm not saying this is the solution to everything, this is just some approaches that I have thought of for this. Yeah.
Maybe not relevant for the workshop, but just thinking about teaching rhythm and meter to undergrads. Do they engage with any of the kind of core literature that we might have grad students?
It depends on the class. In this one, this is not a reading heavy class. So no, they won't be reading, but a lot of the basic core things that I introduced in the beginning, especially, is this metric grid idea that we'll talk about, some London and kind of perceptual constraints that seem to be happening, and those kinds of things. Yeah.
I'm curious what some of the examples of your individual case studies were for this class here.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a 20th century class, and I'm expected to include a bunch of different stuff. We had 1 week on Stravinsky. We had 1 week on Tala. We had 1 week on minimalism. We had 1 week on West African timeline music. And it became, actually with the timeline, Tala, and minimalism, it became kind of a history class for a good chunk of that, because there's all these cross influences that happened. And you can see that Steve Reich got his idea of phasing like directly from a transcription by A.M. Jones of some Ewe music, and so then he, there are a lot of interesting things to talk about influence between world musics and art music and popular musics as you're going through this this particular type of class. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Shall we dig into some Colombian music stuff? All right, so let's get into it. So we're going to start with what we'll call level 0, fundamentals, music fundamentals. Could be for non-majors or beginning music majors in Theory 1. We'll start with some listening. I'll give you some background information about specific forms of music. We'll talk about the instruments, and if you feel like doing model composition, we'll do analysis, but we'll see if we want to do a little bit of model composition at the end of this. So let's get started. Let's listen to this. Cool guy, it's a genre from the Pacific region of Colombia called Lo que suena que será by Grupo Naidi. A lot of the recordings I'll show today are by this ensemble, Grupo Naidi, because they professionally record everything. It's available on Spotify, it's available on YouTube, Apple Music, and so on, and they're pretty celebrated in the region. So as we're listening, try to isolate as many instruments as possible, what instruments are playing, how many of each instrument are playing. And these are some questions that you might ask for fundamentals class. Describe the music, loud, soft, clear beat. Euro music theorists here, think about what beat, what are you feeling as the beat and why. Does it sound major, minor, another scale system, and just anything else that you as more sophisticated music theorists can think of as well to describe this music, and we'll have at it. So this will be a couple minutes long.
De mi niña bonita, lo que suena que será. De mi niña
let's go back. Okay, so let's start with instruments and just any, yeah, let's start with instruments. What were they? You can kind of call them out.
Marimba-ish.
Marimba-ish, yeah, marimba-ish. How many marimba-ish?
2.
2? Yeah. Maybe 2 marimbas, okay. 1, I heard 1, maybe 2. Okay, good. Yeah.
Voice.
Voice, yeah, how many voice? And, or how organized?
Call and response.
Call and response, yeah. Call and response, voice. Great.
Shaker.
Shaker. How many shakers? 1 or many?
I thought 1.
Yeah, maybe 1. 1 or maybe several but playing all in unison. Well, I guess it's a shaker, so. Oh, okay. Good.
Drums. with
Drums,
multiple
yeah, boy.
pitches.
Boy, there were drums. How many, what kinds of drums did we hear? Any particular lines that stood out to you in different drums?
They were able to produce different pitches.
They produced
Low
different
versus high sounds. So
Yeah, low drum, high drum, absolutely.
There wasn't like a low. I would describe it more as like medium and high.
Yeah, okay, so the low, we'll call it a medium
Low-ish.
low, sure. Medium low drum and a high drum, yeah. All right, yeah, you guys basically got it. We'll talk more about the specifics of these instruments in a minute. How about the music besides the instruments and the timbres? Any kind of analytical observations just from listening to this? Yeah.
I think there was some kind of regular beat.
Yep.
Where that beat was might be either shifting or different for different people, particularly the like short long rhythm could be interpreted with the short as the beat or the long.
Yeah, what instrument would?
I'm thinking of the drum dub, low high, low high.
Oh yeah, is it low high, low high?
At first I kind of experienced that and then had like to turn the beat around.
Yeah, the very beginning of that is interesting, I think, for that very reason. We start with the marimba and then that drum comes in, and it's not clear whether it comes in on a downbeat or not a downbeat. Let's just listen to the very, very opening for that. Downbeat, not a downbeat? One more time, listen for whether that's a down, whether you perceive that as a downbeat or not a downbeat. When it comes in, think about why.
Oh, there is a low drum.
yeah,
It sounds like.
That, okay, you feel like it changed. That it's because that's supposed to be a downbeat, but then, or you might be perceiving that as a downbeat for whatever myriad of reasons, but then maybe afterwards it started to flip as more things started clarifying the texture a bit more. Okay, but there's a regular beat, just maybe not so clear from the very beginning where you're feeling it or you're feeling it as changing. Okay, anything else?
The beat seems to be multiple beat divisions, either happening simultaneously, or sometimes it feels, I think, closer to a 2-to-1, and sometimes it feels closer to even. Like the shaker in particular starts to get closer, like a 5-4 proportion or something.
Oh, okay. Weird meter stuff happening, maybe with proceeding. Okay.
It's got the African influence with the beat cycles, so it's more like each. It's interesting because it's like a clear African influence, but there's not the vowel was the
The timeline, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like you're missing that thing in African music that tends to anchor.
Okay, we don't know, so.
It's more like timeline based than like a metric based.
Oh, okay.
That's
and
what
those
Brand's
are two
saying.
different.
Yeah, it's because each instrument has their own timeline and they sync up in one spot, but then kind of go. If that's making sense. I'm not sure if like what's in there.
Yeah, okay, so there isn't an orienting timeline, at least not in a bell, that we can
Right.
hear kind of orally very clearly to help us hear cycles.
I'd like to kind of build on that. I just heard it as like the 12-8, I might notate it as.
Okay, so multiple stuff happening, but at the same, but you're feeling it instead as a 12/8 with maybe some cross rhythm things happening or some additional play between things.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Synchrony between different instruments, particularly like the shaker, because of the nature of a big shaker, there was sort of thickness to beats.
Thickness to beats because many
Yeah, so
instruments were playing at the
one.
same time. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Great.
Kind of changing textures, but adding in instruments and layers and shapes and all.
Okay, yeah, so large scale form, what kind of formal sections did we feel as we were listening to this?
Kind of verse chorus.
Sorry?
Kind of verse chorus in that sort of the ensemble with the plus voice ensemble and then ensemble plus voice kind of.
Yeah, or I was thinking more broadly, there was a section with the chorus and there was a marimba solo and then the section with the chorus kind of came back. Yeah, for sure, and there were these timbral changes that are happening throughout. Good. Saw some other hands I thought over here, but yeah.
When the voice came in, there was a little bit of an Agagic accent that kind of gave me a one case of
Yeah, okay. Long note on the voice part as kind of an orienting moment, because that's repeating over and over again. Que será, da, 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 que será, and that comes back over and over again, and it's helping us orient ourselves there. Absolutely. Key, major, minor, neither, yeah.
Apparently my tired brain is going to sound a lot like my 17-year-olds in my classes. It sounded just like Under the Sea from Little Mermaid, so maybe it's major.
Yeah, okay, sounds happy, maybe it's major. Yeah, okay, absolutely. I think the marimba is, marimba's playing things that sound basically major here. Though there's maybe you've heard something in the voices. Doesn't matter. We'll listen to more examples and see if they're all major in the same kind of way that this one seems major. Okay, great. So we have a bunch of ideas down, and that's just to kind of get our brains and our minds a little bit into the music, and then we can talk about it a little bit more. Okay, so we're talking about music specifically from the southern Pacific region of Colombia. So this is Colombia, this is Panama, Florida's, somewhere over there, this is the Caribbean. Colombia is divided into 5 geographical zones that are kind of regionally very segregated, because this is the Andes that are kind of coming up and down this corridor. This is the Andean region of Colombia. So this section of the country is very separate from this section of the country, the Pacific region, which is very separate from the Caribbean region up here, which is separate from the plains, which is separate from the Amazon rainforest over here. So there's very different populations and different musical styles. There's some kind of cross influences between all of them, but largely musical styles are pretty separate between these different sections. So specifically, we're going to be talking about music from the southern Pacific region in this kind of box over here. As some of you guys already heard, there's a very large kind of African influence going on here. So the Pacific region as a whole has a very large black population. There were a lot of gold mines in the area, and so there were a lot of kind of slave trade going on here, coming into first Cartagena and then moving downward. But over here, there was a gradual development of musical styles which has both heavily African influences and melded with Spanish influences, because there were a lot of Spanish people in the area as well. There may be some indigenous elements as well, but it is much more difficult to trace, because nowadays there's not so much indigenous music that you can say, yeah, this is an indigenous musical element, because it's not so clear anymore. But the African influence is clear, and I think that the Spanish influence is somewhat clear too, if you're thinking, yeah, it's a major sounding thing, and I don't know if you guys heard harmonies underlying what we were listening to, but maybe it sounded a little bit normal.
And obviously the language.
And obviously the language. Obviously the language, yeah. Also, I was asking you guys, yeah, what instruments are going on here. Do we have any Spanish speakers in the room, by any chance? Oh, okay, so when I can say that.
What's sounds?
Yeah, that sound, what is it? And so then the first line is, arriba suena marimba. They're listing all of the instruments back. So if you spoke Spanish in the room, you might have an unfair advantage with writing out what kind of instruments are going so the language absolutely, though it's an idiosyncratic kind of version of Spanish, but yeah, absolutely, the language. And yeah, we could trace specific elements, but at this point, I mean, you have to remember that colonization started 500 years ago in Latin America, and specific, like really specific elements of, you know, what's from here, what's from here, what's from here. At this point, it's its own thing in my mind. And a lot of the elements are not kind of separable so much. But yeah, okay. Some genres from this region include curulao, juga, which is what we just heard, bunde, cantos de boga. We're going to talk about 3 of these genres today. Curulao, juga, and cantos de boga are just some of these. The first 3 are dance genres, so all of them are folk genres, kind of done communally and learned kind of in a folkloric setting without notation and just kind of by joining and doing. While the last one, cantos de boga, those are rowing songs that are improvised. They're not danced and just kind of performed while rowing down rivers in the area. All right. So the instruments that you guys so properly heard. This is the marimba de chonta. It is typically, there's only one in any performance, but you'll see there's 2 sets of mallets here. It's not because there's one person doing, you know, what those marimba players do, but it's because there's typically 2 people playing the marimba, one person playing the lower register, one person playing the higher register. Does this one look diatonic, or does it look chromatic, or we don't know, but we're imagining that it's like a piano.
It's the same that it doesn't have the lower, upper.
Yeah, it doesn't have the lower upper. So this would just be kind of like the white notes of a piano. I wouldn't say this is the fundamental students, but in recent years there have been developments where they've been creating chromatic marimba de chontas as well, and the tuning of them is a source of contention as well. It used to be traditionally tuned kind of just by ear, you know, chop the wood, hear it in a certain way, and there might have been some tuning things that were idiosyncratic at that point, but as luthiers, not luthiers if it's a marimba instrument, but the makers of the instruments would sell them to people more in urban centers as opposed to in the rural centers. The urban musicians who would buy them would return them and say, this is out of tune, get me a better one. So they started using electronic tuners, and now 440 kind of equal temperament is becoming more and more common with marimbas. And people have had Facebook fights about whether these should be allowed into some festivals of traditional music or whether they shouldn't be. But yeah, so we'll hear some marimbas that are clearly equally tempered. I think the one that we just heard seemed pretty equal tempered in A440, and we'll hear some that seem to be more of the traditional kind, not tuned in that particular way. Okay, so marimba chonta played by 2 people. Cununo, this is the higher drum that you heard, played with the hands. There will be 2 people playing the cununo. There will be 2 people playing bombos. These are the lower or medium low drums that are happening. And the guasa, this is the shaker. Typically, the singers who are always women, the response at least always women, will be playing the shaker while they're singing at the same time. And the people who are playing all the other instruments, which would be men typically, would be singing at the same time as well, but the call part, if one of them is singing the call. Questions so far? All right. So, yeah, this is how you would see the marimba chonta. Sometimes it's hung up from the ceiling in particular homes. And so that's like the home of that marimba, and you have 2 people playing.
I was gonna say, like, I know some people have attributed indigenous influence in some Latin American to like the guiro or like gourd type instruments, hollowed out gourd instruments. But I've seen that actually from African musicians. They'll use hollowed out dry gourds for
or the
amplification.
balafon also.
Yeah, and
here
here I'm not seeing that on like I think of a balafon, but I'm not seeing that here. I'm looking at it. Looks like is that Bamboo?
Bamboo, yeah, exactly. Marimba chonta. Chonta is a type of palm. And so the bars are made from this palm, and these resonators are from a type of bamboo that's hollowed out. Yeah, so we don't have the word resonators here.
So
Yeah, that is
something-
interesting.
Is that like unique to this region of Colombia, or is it?
No, the marimba has got a whole trajectory from at least Nicaragua, if not north. There's probably Mexican marimbas as well along the whole Pacific coast, and down to at least Peru. Marimbas are super common, and they use different kinds of resonators. I'm not sure about specific word ones, though. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question. So are these music played by, like, are these like a household items, or are they like more people who like does this like professionally, or?
Yeah, so it depends, right? It used to be like a thing that you would have in your home in this way, hung up. You can't move it. Like, this is the marimba of this home, and people would throw parties in their homes, and you play all night and have a party there.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, the popularization and kind of push to popularize some of these musics has caused a lot of people to become professional musicians, and go into urban centers gigging, and to make the marimbas not ones that hang up, but instead ones that you can transport.
If we do one of these conferences next time, we should have one of those.
We should.
Suspended marimba party.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. You guys should all come to IU, because we just got like 2 of them, and for someone else, it's not even me who's ordering these. Yeah. Yeah. Good, great question. Any other questions? All right. So, again, not trying to insult your intelligence, I'm just pretending you guys are undergraduate students. Let's listen to this part now that we know that there are 2 marimba players playing one particular marimba. Kind of describe what's going on between the 2 marimba parts. They're syncopated, absolutely. They're kind of creating a pocket kind of rhythm, absolutely. Were either of them regular? Oh. Should have seen that. Should we listen again? Think about whether either of them are regular, what degree of regularity each of these have.
We have it under working.
Having some pattern, another probably no.
Yeah, so one is going over and over again, and there's this other part that's kind of playing off of that and kind of landing on some patterns, but then changing that pattern a little bit, and landing on some other pattern, and then changing it a little bit. Yeah. When there are 2 marimba players playing this one marimba, the person playing the lower register will always be playing this ostinato. So we said that there's no timeline in the sense that there's no bell, but this is kind of analogous to a timeline in that there is a repeating ostinato that repeats over and over again, and it provides not only the kind of rhythmic basis in a sense, but it also provides the harmonic basis for a piece of Curulao or Cuga. So these specific ostinatos that are played in the lower register of the marimba are called bordones. Let me play through some of these. Or actually, here's our first note. Let's sing them. If we were to pick a key, what key would be in? C minor, do like movable do? Well, I guess it doesn't matter because we're in C. Okay. All right, great. I'm gonna count I'm trying to not sway you. I'm going to count to 6 eighth notes. Yeah, I'm going to count to 6 eighth notes, and then you guys are going to come in. So, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Keep doing Great. All right. Again, now let's do this next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, well, good. The next one. Choose the upper line. Let's. Okay. Do the top part. Do the top part. Ignore the bottom part. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. Should we do half? Do the upper part, half to the lower part? All right. You guys do the upper part. You guys do the lower part. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. Let's speed it up. Great, awesome. So what do these three have in common, and how can we describe them in some sort of way? Yeah.
The whole timeline can be thought of as fitting into 12 divisions.
In 12 divisions. Okay, so they all last the same amount of time. No idea how to group them, but they last 12 divisions on a unit, absolutely. Anything else? Yeah.
In each of the 2 bar, it's like maybe I should use this terminology, but it's like a 1 chord and like a 5 chord.
Okay.
Like a minor 5.
Yeah. 1 chord and minor 5 chord.
Structures, yeah.
What?
There's chordal structures of some.
There's chordal structures. This seems to be one kind of sound, and this seems to be another kind of sound. Okay, we can apply chordal names as well. Yeah, good. Minor dominant. In this case, we haven't raised the leading tone if you're thinking in that way. Great. Anything else? Rhythmically, any similarities or differences between these three?
Second half's always the same.
7 is, yeah, the second half is always short, long, short, long. Okay, great. We're not talking about specific influences, but one particular curulao performer, probably the most famous one, who's currently alive, Hugo Candelario, he does say kind of that some elements are Spanish, some elements are African, some elements are indigenous. He says that this short, long is an indigenous kind of thing. He provides no, evidence for that, but that's his kind of intuition as a musician of his practice, is that this short, long rhythmic pattern is something that's from some sort of indigenous music. Okay, yeah, and the first half, no rhythmic similarities there. Rhythmic values, we're using just 8th notes and just quarter notes, it seems, so everything is in a 2-to-1 ratio to one another. And anything else about this? All right. Oh, yeah.
So the first and third seem to prefer groupings of 3 8 notes, and the second one has this kind of feel where the first measure is grouped into 2 8 notes.
Can you say that one more time?
The first and the A and C pattern, the first measure implies kind of groupings of 3 8 notes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the B pattern, at least the first measure, implies groupings of 2 8 notes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's kind of feel.
Okay, sure. So the groupings of 8 notes seem emphasized a little bit differently in the first measure of these components. Sure.
Yeah. So within a practice of this, would someone choose just one and repeat it, or would they go between the 2?
Just one repeated for the entire piece. And this is, yeah.
Is the upper part improvised?
The upper part is improvised, yeah. There are specific formal sections where the upper register marimba player will land on a pattern, so and not improvise as much, so that the vocalist can come in and do their thing, and so that the marimba player is not taking over. But then in the introductions and in kind of marimba interludes, then they'll improvise a lot. Yeah. But so the lower register, this bordon player will choose one at the beginning of a curulao specifically. When you have this harmonic rhythm of 6 8 notes and then 6 8 notes, that's a curulao. they'll choose one and go with it for the entire piece. I was going to say something else, but I forgot what it was. All right. For like a one-shot class on this that I would do with fundamentals, I would then, based on this analysis that we've done, based on these three borderlines that we've seen so far, compose your own based on the same kind of practices, and then we could perform them all together and everything. This would take more than 10 minutes for them, and I think less than 10 minutes for you guys. Can I just get a show of hands? Who would like to compose their own right now? Okay, who would not like to compose their own right now? Okay, we could. I got one vote for no, so we'll call it a no. But you guys could write your own, and then we can perform through them with some of the basic patterns that I haven't talked about yet, because again, I'm trying to not sway your metric interpretations just yet. But now let's go to level 1. That was for a fundamentals class. Now we're starting where I would talk about for the undergraduate Theory 5 class for students who are a bit more experienced. So we're really trashing Burstein and Strauss this week. I'm going to be treading really similar ground to Jocelyn for the next 20 minutes or so bear with me. So, Burstein and Strauss write that a time signature consisting of 2 stacked numbers defines the meter. Jocelyn was coming towards this anti-time signature thing from a perspective of some of her students are not comfortable with time signatures, and it's not something that we want to give into them, and some other ones are familiar, and so metric grids are kind of a middle ground, and you can avoid time signatures. In my case, I'm kind of trying to break time signatures and say, well, they're not defined as the meter. So let's think about why this is a little bit of an oversimplification. So first, even in notated music, several different time signatures might be assigned to the same piece and result in similar, if not identical, performances. So we've already seen this bordon, dun, 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 dun. It's a not notated tradition. But if you were to see it like this, it would sound, and you would perform it quite similarly than if you would perform it, than if you would see it like this. And it would be quite similar than if you would see it like this, assuming that the tempo is the same. So what is the same between these kind of 3 different interpretations?
Rhythmic proportion.
Rhythmic proportions, yeah, and if we're thinking about what Jocelyn was talking about yesterday, the metric grid is the same. For all of these, you have a triple kind of subdivision that is grouped into, in these particular notations implying, is grouped into 4 beats total. We'll say every 2 of those beats is metrically stronger, and that the hypermeter, we'll call it the hypermeter, is the strongest moment of all. So the notation that I have here is a metric grid. As we were talking about yesterday, this is following basically Leonard Jackendorf, and it shows the relationship between metric periodicities without necessarily requiring notation to represent it. And without getting into depth about how meter cognition really works, more dots at a particular moment roughly translates to the strongest perceived beat, which translates to cognitively the highest peak in attention to that particular moment. But we're not going to get into the cognition of it. But yeah, so time signatures, you can have several different time signatures, and they can all mean metrically the same thing. Okay. Besides the problem that different time signatures can represent the same perceived meter in the sense of a metric grid and peaks of attention, the second and third problems with defining meter by a notated time signature are, of course, a lot of music is not notated and therefore doesn't have a time signature. And third, that 2 different listeners might perceive 2 or more different meters when listening to exactly the same music. So for instance, let's add this additional 6/4 interpretation to the bordon that we listened to before. This time signature, the 6/4, does not imply the same metric grid as the previous 3 examples did. In this case, it would imply dun, 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 something like that, right? So now we have a duple subdivision rather than a triple subdivision, compound subdivision, at the fastest level of the grid here. So let's listen to this particular ostinato in a couple more times. on this first listen, actively try to feel it in 3/4 and see if anything in particular stands out to you. 3/4 being, you know, a notational representation of a metric grid where the duple is happening at the fastest level. Let's listen to that just one more time. Try to feel it in 3. Any particular notes stand out to you more when you're hearing it in this 3? Yeah.
For me, the second beat one doesn't sound strong in the way that I would expect it to by looking at something in 3 on a page like this.
The second beat one.
Yeah, so like the B flat.
This one didn't feel that strong?
That doesn't feel as strong to me.
Oh,
as I
interesting.
expected it to.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
I hear more of an accent on the second 8th note.
Yeah.
That bar. But,
Why do you think that is?
It's longer.
It's longer, yeah, okay, so we're maybe used to hearing short notes as being in metrically weak positions, so
Yeah.
we're swayed in that direction. That's interesting, yeah.
Similarly, it then feels more syncopated with that G
Feels more syncopated
in that second measure.
in the second measure. Okay, but the first measure felt pretty comfortable? Dun, 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 yeah. A little bit more comfortable? Yeah, okay. Maybe the G's, the last quarter note G's, may have kind of stood out more in this interpretation because there's this parallelism there and those are long notes that are emphasized there. But yeah, okay. Interesting. Let's try another interpretation, the 6/8 interpretation. Now actively try to hear it in 6/8 and see if anything else stands out to you different. One more. Any other impressions? Yeah.
Compound melody.
What?
The compound melody stands out more.
Yeah! Can you elaborate on that?
Well, the C to the B flat to the D
Yeah,
sounds like a
dun,
voice over
dun,
and
dun, dun, dun. There's this kind of double neighbor thing that's going on there while you have the lower note kind of staying a little bit more static, and that stands out more. Yeah, great. Anything else that stands out more? Yeah.
Yeah, it's easier to recognize the repetition of the rhythm for like the second half of the first measure and then each half of the second.
Yeah, there's a nice parallelism here. Dun, 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 and that nice short lung becomes a very clear motivic thing when you're hearing it in this interpretation. Yeah, so even those were the exact same recording several times, right? But the difference may have felt very, very real between these several different interpretations, and different things can stand out to you differently depending on the way that you are perceiving the meter here.
Can I also say, I
Yeah,
thought, like, doing that exercise, the 3/4 reading, the second C kind of stood out to me. Like the and of beat 2 in both of the measures, because the pitch is higher than, like, when you're jumping back up and it's syncopated. Actually, it feels like a polyrhythm when you do it that way.
Yeah, okay. So there's when you're feeling it in 3/4, these high notes are giving you the.
And then when you did the 6, it really like stood out to me even more.
Yeah.
Then you just feel that differently. You feel like it's on the beat, not a polyrhythm.
Yeah, exactly. That's gonna play again, isn't it? It might play again. But yeah, so the question that arises when we're doing this kind of exercise is, as we've already been hinting at, and as Jocelyn talked about yesterday, why would you feel it one way or another when you're not being told by a score or by a person? Yeah, how are you going to go about figuring out why you're feeling it one way or another? I'm going to erase some of these things over here. Let's just remember some of the things that were mentioned by Jocelyn yesterday, or additional things. Like, what would you, we already said long note just now, is what's causing that B flat to feel metrically weaker than the G that immediately follows it, because we want that G to be a long, that long note to be perceived as a downbeat or a beat of some sort. What other musical elements might cause you to want to feel something as the beat or downbeat? Yeah.
Maybe register?
Register, yeah. So highest, like register extremes maybe, and something higher or low, you want that to be perceived as stronger, yeah?
I think the repetition of the patterns, so like in absence of any visual or like master teacher telling you where it is, like the only thing you really have to go on is, I hear this pattern and then it repeats.
Yes.
And then it
Yeah, okay, so if you hear a pattern in a certain way at the beginning, if you hear it later, you'll probably hear it in the same way.
That has to be the only strong beat, is like when it starts again.
Yes. Yeah. Great, good.
And I think that even without knowing what, discussing it in terms of keys, just the repetition of the G can really shift where you're hearing.
Yeah, G maybe because of the register, or what about the G?
Just because it's so constant throughout compared to the
Okay,
C,
yeah, like a pitch prolongation kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Great. That was a much better way.
I'm copying someone.
Similarly, like the applied harmony or harmonic rhythm.
Harmonic
that, like,
rhythm.
Doge melody.
Yep, great. Anything else? For those of you who don't know yet, this is basically what you're saying to me right now is learn all the Jack and Duff symmetric preference rules. So these are, they use it in a kind of static-ish way, but I find that they're very useful for just really articulating, why it is that you're feeling this as beat or not beat. There's one more that Jocelyn did talk about. Let's see. This is maybe related to register, but conduct along when you feel like you figured it out. Okay, what? Time signature? How many? 5, yeah, and why? Pace, yeah, okay. So, I think there's more, there's kind of infinite-ish, but these are some of the basic ones that you might be kind of latching on to as you're listening to music. But here's where things get a little bit interesting. What if I did something like this? That's a typical 3/4, right? Sounds a little bit like a waltz because of the bass. What if I did this? Where are you feeling the downbeat now?
We practice.
I primed you, but even if I hadn't primed you, and I had gone da 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 da.
Well, that's the agave.
The second one maybe, but if I was a good pianist and it sounded really like a pa-pa of a boom pa-pa, you maybe would still feel a downbeat on the da-da-da-da. Why, if we're thinking in metrical kind of?
It's cultural.
Cultural, yeah. And that's where a huge kind of issue starts to arise. There's a difference between, these are called, you'll call them metric signals, or metric preference rules over here. There's a difference between that when you are kind of unfamiliar with the music or kind of familiar with the music, but you're pulling out all of these different elements and trying to decipher what the meter is based on that. But there's this flip side where if you've heard a particular pattern in a particular way before, you can just apply a meter to that, even if there's nothing that's actually implying it in the music itself, in the sound itself. So the papa waltz pattern without the might be one of those. We'll call this, a schema. I heard another good word somewhere. Template. But that's not, what's the word that someone said? Pattern, is that what someone said? Yeah, cultural, okay. Yeah, and this is the kind of cultural aspect. That's the learned thing based on your exposure to particular music. Can anyone think of any other patterns that, if you think about them in this sense, you wouldn't get the right meter, but the meter is very clear if you are familiar with a particular pattern? Yeah.
Backbeats?
Backbeats, exactly what I was thinking. If you hear with a particular timbre of a snare drum, there's no reason that you would think that that's a downbeat, right? But you've heard so much pop music where that is where that backbeat is the weak part rather than the strong part. Absolutely, that's exactly one that I was thinking. Any other ones that come to mind?
Like
Yeah.
ska and reggae guitar?
Sorry?
Guitar and ska and reggae?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. So syncopated things that you've heard syncopated your whole life, if you hear it syncopated without any clarification, you might still apply downbeatness to some moment where there isn't anything happening. Great.
I think like a bodily gesture have a lot to proceed
Oh
to.
yeah, like if you're watching someone, you're seeing a conductor conduct something and they have like a strong downbeat and then nobody plays anymore. You still feel that as like a strong downbeat, right? Yeah.
Beethoven 5 then.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, exactly. You really feel that downbeat even if you don't hear anything there. Absolutely. Maybe besides all these loud rests, this is another one of learn all the jacking offs, but let's see if I can do this. Let's see. Which one of those is metrically strong? The dissonance. Is there a reason, really, for a dissonance to be metrically stronger? Not really. Not all dissonances are metrically stronger than consonances, but suspensions in particular, we've heard so many suspensions, or hopefully every suspension, except maybe written by some students, that on the downbeat or on a stronger position than their resolutions. So there's no real reason for that. It's just because we're culturally used to that. So there's this huge difference here between, prying out all of these metric signals versus, oh, I have experience with music like this or this particular piece. And so there's this schema tension versus this metric signal tension that's kind of riding, that's always there in our metric perception. When we're talking about music that we're not familiar with, we just have to be very aware that the methods that we're doing for meter cognition are the things on the left of this board, while the people who are performing the music are probably doing some mental work that's on the right side of the board. And so there are some things there's information that we are not receiving and that we cannot receive unless we really, really immerse ourselves. So it's just a matter of, making it clear that, oh yes, I feel it this way because of these little elements, but there's a lot of background knowledge that I don't know and I can't. Any thoughts about that before we move on a little bit? All right. Talk about that a little bit. Okay, so now I will tell you. Conventionally, this is thought of in what one might call 6/8. Traditionally, it wasn't called 6/8, but you can see people stomping their feet to dun 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 dun, and that's how the dance goes. It's dance music, so there isn't really any ambiguity there, even if you feel things a little bit differently. And nowadays there's this competition called the Festival Petronio Alvarez, which happens in the Pacific region every year in August, so it's coming up soon. And they, not to get into the details of this too much, but there's a music festival competition aspect of it, and musicians who are playing in these styles are required to play 2 songs in 6/8 and some genre and some other styles. So even though traditionally it wasn't thought in 6/8, now musicians have to at least know, okay, Gurulao and Buga, these are thought of as in 6/8. These count as 6/8 genres, even if they're not necessarily taught or know or care what that means. All right, so here are some of the patterns. The curuno macho is one of these higher drums. The curuno hembra is a slightly smaller one of these higher drums. Again, we have a pair. What does macho and hembra mean? Spanish speaker?
Male, female.
Male, female. Male, female drums. This is a thing in all sorts of Latin American traditions, maybe elsewhere where different drums are assigned different genders for some reason, but only men will play these typically, even though the roles for some are women. So the curuno macho will always play this particular repeating pattern. The curuno hembra, slightly higher, will have this pattern, but it's a higher pitched drum. It's like the lead drum, so it can be feel free to improvise a little bit more in the macho. Bombo arrullador, that's one of the lower bass drums. Bombo arrullador is the other one, the lowest of the drums. And the guasa is the shaker. There's two potential patterns that one might do on a guasa. But sometimes they might happen at the same time, and you'll have this nice kind of wash of shaker sound if both of those are happening simultaneously. Let's give these a try. Repeat after me. ¿Por qué? 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 Great. Spanish speaker, sorry. Which of those words is accented when you speak Spanish? If you were just saying por qué.
Okay.
Okay, actually, any of you can do this if I just say it. Okay, let's do the second one. I'll just say it and you guys tell me which word is accented. ¿Qué te pasa a vos? Pas. Okay, great. Bambuco. Ooh. Yeah, okay, great. Dele duro. Duro, yeah. And the last one doesn't have a mnemonic device. These are some of the mnemonic devices that might be used to teach some basic patterns. In this case, the accented word in Spanish, the accented syllable rather in Spanish aligns with a beat of what we will call 6/8. So we already did the por qué, let's do the con uno hembra. I'll count you off in 6 and then you'll join me. I'll start and then you'll join me. ¿Qué te pasa a vos? 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 Great. Now let's do the bambuco. Bambuco, 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 bambuco. Great. Bambuco is another name for the genre of curulao. And let's do our last one on bombo golpeador. Dele duro, dele duro, dele duro, dele duro. Okay, awesome. These open notes mean, well, these stars mean open notes, so they're going to be lower and more resonant than everything else. That's why the dele duro is like really dramatic on the do, even though not metrically accented, because in Spanish, do is not accented, and do is. All right. And, the shaker. Let's just do the first guasa. This one, no mnemonic device, but all right. Let's do this now and be a little curulao/juga ensemble. How many of us are there? Good amount. Okay. Yeah, this is a great number. This row, and Sarah, you guys will be con uno macho. You guys will be con uno hembra. You guys will be the first bombo arrullador. You guys do your low voices for the bombo golpeador. Actually, let's add one more person. You join them with the bombo golpeador. And you guys can be the first guasa. We'll just go ch-ch. Okay, we'll start with you guys, then we'll join. 1, 2, 1, 2. ¿Por qué? 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 ¿Qué te pasa a vos? 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 Bambuco, 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 yeah, so these are some of the mnemonic devices that you might use, and then start talking about how spelled in 6/8, and you can feel all these other things kind of crossing against it, maybe in a hemiotic relationship against that.
Does this have any relationship to the drum language of what I was thinking about yesterday? Does those drums actually say those things, or is that just like a way of teaching?
No, they don't say those things. I've never heard of someone talking about them saying anything. It's just a device used to teach the basic patterns. Yeah. Originally, I don't know, but nowadays at least that's not.
I know in African musics, they have mnemonic devices that are also drum language. So yeah, so the mnemonic means something, but is also used just to learn.
All right. So, okay. So let's keep going then. And let's get into level 2. This would be week 2 of our class. Week 2 or maybe week 3 of our class on meter specifically. We're getting into hypermeter territory. The distinction really between meter and hypermeter, as we talked about yesterday, just going slower along the metric hierarchy. But if you want a different, but the same definition, meter is a pattern of perceived strong and weak beats. A grouping of beats that you perceive is a felt measure, even if it's not notated. And hypermeter would be a pattern of perceived and strong. What? Pattern of perceived strong and weak measures, felt measures, whether they're notated or not. But basically, just going slower along the metric grid is what we're going to be doing now. Okay. Now that you've learned your basic patterns, I have them over here. Let's listen to this one. Let's listen to this one fuga called Atumako lo Quemaron. Don't look at the, I know I say partial transcriptions are available, don't look at the partial transcriptions. Let's just give this one a listen. Now that you know that it's in 6/8, try listening for some of these patterns in there to establish the beat. Maybe tap it to yourself, and then when I feel like people have gotten it, we'll go slower, and I'll just snap the measures. And then out of those measures, I want you guys to think about, if you were to conduct those measures, which of the measures would be strongest and why. It starts with a little bit of an ametric thing, so don't get too affected by the beginning, but the drums will come in soon and help us out.
Atumako lo quemaron a la una y a las dos. Atumako lo quemaron a la una y a las dos. A las 3 de la mañana a la una y a las 2. A las 3 de la mañana a la una y a las 2. Una mujer lloraba a la una y a las 2. Una mujer lloraba a la una y a las 2.
anyone feel like they have a strong sense of some sort of hypermeter here? Would anyone feel comfortable conducting along with their interpretation of which ones they're feeling is metrically strongest? Have any volunteers? I'm not going to make you all do it at the same time, because then what if you have different opinions? Yeah, Erin, thank you. Okay.
I don't know if I'm right.
That's okay. Let's start from the beginning. So you can ignore the beginning and just when the drums come in.
I'll see if I can remember what I.
A tu mato lo quemaron, a la una y a las dos. A tu mato lo quemaron, a la una y a las dos. A las 3 de la mañana, a la una y a las 2. A las 3 de la mañana, a la una y a las 2. Una mujer lloraba, a la una y a las 2. Una mujer lloraba, a la una y a las 2.
Great, thank you, Erin. Does anyone have a different opinion or have a different interpretation? Yeah.
I think I feel the one a measure later.
Yeah. The one a measure later. Shall we try that one out? There we go. Would you mind conducting along with that?
Give it a shot.
A tu mato lo quemaron, a la una y a las 2. A tu mato lo quemaron, a la una y a las 2. A las 3 de la mañana, a la una y a las 2. A las 3 de la mañana, a la una y a las 2. Una mujer lloraba, a la una y a las 2. Una mujer lloraba.
All right, very good. Okay, so we have these two contrasting interpretations. Let's see if we can talk about it without looking at the transcription. Why one way? Why the other way? It doesn't just have to be the two people who volunteered. Which did we prefer as you were conducting or watching me conduct? And maybe why? Yeah.
It sort of depends if you're feeling the phrase as end-weighted or start-weighted.
Absolutely. Okay, so it's either and the cadence, and then the phrase a little bit weak, or exactly. It's the beginning accented versus end accented issue that those of us familiar with hypermeter related things have maybe seen tread a couple of times. Absolutely. So if we're now let's look at the score a little bit more, or a little bit. You may turn to it. It is on page 3. By score, I mean my attempt at a transcription of some aspects of it. Thinking in terms of these metric signals that we have on the board, maybe just with a couple people around you, think about those two different interpretations. And think about metric signal-wise, like really specifically, what things are happening at which of those two options.
Are there extra handouts floating around anywhere?
Oh, yeah.
There.
Should I keep playing it quietly while we're thinking about it? All right. So just thinking about what metric signals are going on at those sections. And while this transcription is just a page of it, it's a repetitive song, so it'll keep going. There we go.
A tu mato lo quemaron, a la una y a las 2. A tu mato lo quemaron, a la una y a las 2. A las 3 de la mañana, a la una y a las 2. A las 3 de la mañana, a la una y a las 2. Una mujer lloraba, a la una y a las 2. Una mujer lloraba, a la una y a las 2.
All right, any thoughts? Did you find more metric signals for one or for the other interpretation? Which ones are kind of happening where? Yes.
I was just thinking it's a nice version of the sort of mental struggle of, do you go with primacy effects or do you go with, because when I start I'm straight there with the beginning, but then afterwards I can kind of push myself, but it's somewhat effortful because one's already up and running, so I'm just going to go with that kind of thing.
That's fair. Okay, so you prefer the beginning accented where the beginnings of the phrases aligned with the beginnings of a hypermetric unit. Okay, great.
Looking at the harmony, you have that resolution of maybe kind of dominant implication to the tonic, feeling the tonic arrival as weighted as the.
Yeah, if we're doing the harmony, it's yeah. Or we
The arrival of the dose. It's because you've got the pickup in the vocal like cues you first, but then the dose.
That's where the tonic arrives.
Right.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, but then that's a really long pickup, so then your brain kind of goes crazy. Trying to make sense
okay,
of
so you're
it.
like kind of toggling between
Right,
the two.
yeah, like two worlds, which then you go, are we just applying things that don't matter to this music, and like, just should we just go with it?
Yes.
They don't care, so why do we? I don't know.
Fair, very fair. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
I think that the first bar for me when the drums come in is really interesting because for me that feels more like a ramp up, and the fact that like the lowest drum doesn't come in until that next downbeat, and so it's like such also me as a drummer like, oh, this feels more like a fill, and now we have the beginning of the phrase, and so that because of that, I then hear that resolution as like a quote unquote authentic cadence and accent.
Okay, so you do end up with the end accent.
Yeah, but because that when the drums first come in, it's not a full. It's not like here's down. It's like here's our little, and then the lowest drum not coming in until after the soloist has started. There we go.
Interesting, but I think that's a beginning accent interpretation, right? If we're looking at measure 9, that's the end of the phrase. Measure 10 is the next beginning.
Yeah, exactly. So the dose is the end of the
Oh, okay, and you do feel that as the Oh, okay, I got it. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah.
And I think the introduction, just the vocal introduction, primes you for that too.
Yeah.
That it doesn't, like, it'd be really difficult to hear the downbeat before the singing starts.
Oh, that's absolutely right. Yeah, so starting on 2 at the very beginning would be a little bit weird, although it's a little bit, it's not
possible.
It's a more rubato-ish section though, so is there even a meter? I don't know, that section, it's a little bit more interesting. Yeah.
I also feel like I'm primed to hear cadences hypermetrically on beat 4, not on beat 1. Right?
That's very true.
Like they're on beat 1 of the measure, but not beat 1 of the hypermetric.
Yeah.
It's almost like the marimba is the opposite though, because a lot of its cadences, it doesn't cadence on the dose most of the time. At the very first one it does, but after that, it always is is not, has it, what am I trying to say? Sorry, my brain is so tired.
It doesn't hit at the same time.
Yeah, it doesn't hit at the same time as it does.
Yeah, and it's entirely syncopated the entire time. Yeah.
But the harmony still shifts to tonic.
The harmony still shifts to tonic, and when does the dominant arrive? Out.
2 bars.
2 bars later. Okay, so we have a 2
So it's a 2 plus 2,
yeah, it's a 2 plus 2 kind of thing. So if you're going by harmony, if you're attuning yourself to the harmonic changes, then that'll play you towards the end accent interpretation, not just because of the cadence, but because of the harmonic changes in general here. Yeah, okay. I liked, I'm forgetting your name, I'm so sorry, but or I think it's you over here.
Oh, Julia.
Said, like, yeah, is this like, obviously, is this the way that people are thinking about it? Of course not, but this is dance music.
Right.
If there's more of an emphasis on a particular moment in the dance, then, even if they're not saying this is the hypermeter, is it not perceived as metrically stronger than the surrounding measures? I don't know.
Do you have a video of the dance?
The dance a certain number of beats.
Right, like can we interpret it without watching the
Or
dance?
is it more of a beat thing?
So the main steps of the dance are kind of outlining the beat like this, and it's an improvised dance in a lot of ways, so it's kind of going with the flow. I don't have a video on me that I can just like whip out right now. But there's not a whole lot of dancing in this one, they're just kind of sitting and performing for the camera. But you will see like, I think a bigger like movement shift downward on the harmonic changes and the cadences. And they seem to be organized around the cadences rather than around the beginnings. And it seems like because the harmonic changes are strong in general, like as establishing the beats and the downbeats, mainly the downbeats of these 6/8 measures that we're imagining, harmonic changes seem to be really important in the region. So I personally interpret this as end accented music where the beginnings are hypermetrically weak and leading towards the end. Even if in the beginning you don't so much perceive it that way, I think the percussion coming in at the end of a phrase rather than at the beginning is also a really strong sway in that particular direction. I have a couple of other examples of these. These are fugas, because we said curula before, the bordones that we were looking at, it was one measure, tonic, and then dominant. This has a slower harmonic rhythm. That makes this a fuga rather than curulao, even though they both use the same kind of unpitched percussion matrix that you did. So it's the slower harmonic rhythm that makes it a thing. Okay. I have some more complex examples of this. Maybe we'll just listen to it rather than, or listen to them rather than like actually analyze them. But these fugas and all of these genres are really stylized, right? There's like a lot of conventions that go with it. So let's listen to this second one. The score, or the transcription rather, is there, but I don't think you need it. So let's not. Where is this? Here we go. Let's give this a listen, see if you can hear any similarities between the piece that we just heard and this one over here.
De los pecados del agua, la mojarra y el moco. De los pecados del agua, la mojarra y el moco. De mojarra y el moco, a mí me gusta mi camarón. De mojarra y el moco, a mí me gusta mi camarón. Me gusta mi camarón, a mí me gusta mi camarón. Me gusta mi camarón.
All right, I'll stop it there. Similarities, differences. Which ones are more of similarities or differences? Similarities. Yeah. Okay. You have the same kind of arrival on the tonic harmony. These 4-bar units, whether you feel them as beginning or end accented, and melodically, there's some similarities too. Versus, yeah, which one was I singing? I don't know. Melodically, there's these schemas going on as well, where you're leaping up to scale 7 and going back down afterwards. So this is like a really schematized thing in this genre in these fugas. But now let's give a listen to this more challenging example. This one will be with a video, if this allows it. Yeah, here we go. Let's give this one a listen.
Abotando la quebranta yo me caí. Porque que no me dijiste que estaba hondo eso de ahí. Abotando la quebranta yo me caí. Porque que no me dijiste que estaba hondo eso de ahí. Porque que no me dijiste que estaba hondo eso de ahí. Porque que no me dijiste que estaba hondo eso de ahí. Me invitaste al otro lado. Porque estaba hondo eso de ahí. A coger poco en ahí. Porque estaba hondo eso de ahí.
Anyone notice anything in particular as you're listening to that? Tuning. What about tuning?
I'm not the person to ask.
Okay. Something about tuning. Okay, something about tuning. Great. Metrically, anyone notice similarities or differences to the stuff that the other two tracks that we listened to? Let's give it another bit of a listen. Notice when the percussion comes in.
El corazón no. Agotando la quebranta yo me caí. Porque que no me dijiste que estaba hondo eso de ahí. Agotando la quebranta yo me caí. Porque que no me dijiste que estaba hondo eso de ahí. Porque que no me dijiste que estaba hondo eso de ahí. Porque que no me dijiste que estaba hondo eso de ahí.
Does it land on the O? Do they enter on the O part of it? I think so. Or 2 measures away from it. A little bit different of an entrance and the harmonic rhythm as we're going into it. Now, maybe let's look at the score actually, or the transcription. It's a little bit more irregular than the ones that we were looking at before. Maybe the hypermeter, if there is one, is not so clear until after things have kind of been established later on. So let's give this one more listen. Track along with the harmonic changes, see how often they change, and kind of what's going on there.
Agotando la quebranta yo me caí. Porque que no me dijiste que estaba hondo eso de ahí. Agotando la quebranta yo me caí. Porque que no me dijiste que estaba hondo eso de ahí. Porque que no me dijiste que estaba hondo eso de ahí. Porque que no me dijiste que estaba hondo eso de ahí.
It becomes regularized into 2s and 2s. Anyone catch how often the harmonies are changing, if it's regular, if it's irregular? What part is kind of particularly helpful for seeing?
It's like being handed out between the soloist and the group singers.
Yeah, and it's being handed out at somewhat irregular intervals. There we have our, we have one full measure of rest before the response comes in with the, and then we don't have a full measure of rest, we just kind of keep going. And then the next time that happens, measure 15, and we land on the 5. And you don't have a full measure in between. Instead, you just kind of have, they come in at that end of the very next measure. And so there's this kind of shortening, gradual shortening that's going on there. Harmonic changes start with like really big 6 measure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 measure units. And then measure 12, it changes back to a tonic, 1, 2, 3. Then you have a 4, and then you have kind of a 5, and you're kind of, it's a lot more wobbly at that point and irregular, kind of based on this playing between the chorus and the response. And notice also the response, you're going up to that leading tone twice, that automatically makes that a little bit longer of a response than the ones that we had before, schematically versus the other songs before, going back towards that tonic. And then when the percussion comes in, you regularize into the standard who got 2 + 2 + 2, and harmonic changes there. Okay, I think let's, where are we? We are here, and then take a little break. Okay, so a couple of kind of repertoire specific takeaways so far. Hugan to Brulao are the 2 kind of matrices that we have listened to and learned about so far, conventionally thought of or danced to, and what is conceptualized as 6/8, although there might be other ways of perceiving meter. We'll talk about especially in Atumaco lo Quemaron, the first fuga that we heard, you might have heard some interesting stuff happening in the marimba, in the upper register in particular, so we'll talk about that a little bit after the break. Harmonies alternate between tonic and dominant in both genres, and fuga harmonies change once per measure, and fuga harmonies change more slowly and more irregularly, typically felt as metrically strong, and the ends of phrases tend to be perceived as metrically stronger and accented, partially because of the emphasized harmonic changes. I think also because of the dance, but I'll try to find an example of the dance visually before over the break. But yeah, let's take a break, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then come back and we'll talk about irregular meters and what else did we talk about? Oh yeah, and like polyrhythms and the weird stuff the marimba was doing. So thank you guys. See you guys.
Yes, we call it just
All right, shall we start again?
Yes.
All right, so now we move on to talking about irregular meters, non-isochronous meters, asymmetric, however you want to talk about it, something with a little bit of irregularity. And for this, my go-to are these cantos de boga rowing songs. Not dance music, but were unaccompanied rowing songs performed along rivers. The region is very wet and windy. It's almost the Amazon area, so there's a lot of rain and a lot of rivers. But this is more of a historical genre at this point because these used to be performed by women who were rowing along the boat on these rivers. But nowadays, and it used to take a very long time to get from town A to town B on these rowboats. But in the past couple decades, there's been a big push towards the use of motorboats, and that has not only made it you can't sing on a motorboat because it's loud and fast, but there's also this kind of the paddling of the canoe used to establish the beat in what's called froncar canalete, is the sound of the oar against the canoe. So that's missing when you have the motorboats. And in addition to that, even if someone wanted to go on a rowboat nowadays, a couple of musicians have told me it would be dangerous at this point to do that because there are motorboats and these are little small canoes. And so if you have a motorboat next to a canoe, you know what happens is you're gone. So this is more of a historical genre at this point. Sometimes it's performed at this festival that I was talking about before, but it's more of a performative setting rather than an actual on the rowboat situation. So these are based on Spanish poetic system based on octosyllabic subphrases and a call and response kind of thing. The melody is cyclic. Usually it'll be one call and then one response, and together that will form a sort of melodic cycle. And unlike the rudas and fugas, which are dance music, and so there's particular steps in what we've called 6/8 there that everyone's dancing to, and that's kind of understood. These cantos de boga are not metrically prescribed. They're improvised, so however long the octosyllabic subphrase takes musically will be how long the call is, and then the response will be the response, and then however long it ends up being is how long it ends up being. But the melodies are cyclic, so whatever it is the first time you have a call and response, it'll be the same as you get more of those. So that said, again, Grupo Reyli records a lot of their stuff, so let's listen to Aguacerito Llover, meaning rain, torrential downpour kind of rain. It's kind of a call for rain if you take the lyrics literally. So let's give this a listen. It's a cyclic melody. Think about, in the cycle, how many beats are you perceiving, and is there some sort of flexibility there? So let's give this a listen. And sorry to Vlad and the other people in the room who maybe heard this song too many times for me already.
Aguacerito llover, oh, oh, ve, aguacerito llover, aguacerito llover, oh,
Who feels like they got how many beats approximately they were proceeding in per cycle?
Like 12 to 13.
12 to 13, I would agree, 12 to 13, sounds great. Let's take it as 13, but could be 12 with fermata at the end and then the rest of it.
12 and a half.
Oh, 12 and a half sometimes, it was definitely 12 and a half sometimes. Let's take it as 13, sometimes it is a full 13, sometimes it's shortened a little bit more than that. All right, do you feel the first beat as the downbeat and then 12 beats that are all equally unaccented, do you think? If not, let's listen to it again and try to think about which of those 13 beats you feel as stronger than the rest of the 13 beats, and think about why. I do have an exercise transcription type thing on page 8 if you'd like to look at a transcription of the melody that's unbeamed, unbarred, and just so you can look at it and think about why you think this or that is metrically stronger than other moments. All right, so let's give it another listen, knowing that what I transcribed as a half note at the end is sometimes a little bit shorter than a half note, making it 12 and a half.
Aguacerito llover, oh, oh, y ve, aguacerito llover, aguacerito llover, oh, oh, y ve, aguacerito llover, allá arriba en aquel alto, oh, oh, y ve. Hay un palo de caimito, y ve aguacerito llover. Cada vez que subo y bajo, y ve aguacerito llover. Me silban los pajaritos, aguacerito llover, aguacerito llover, y ve aguacerito llover.
Yeah, we're not getting into the tuning in this one either, but all right. Okay, brief word about the tuning. It seems like Adam, again, you definitely have better ears than me about this, but it seems like sometimes it's between major and minor, there's a neutral third kind of thing going on, or several people on one note, but like 40-ish cents apart, or something like that, and so you get this kind of beating that's going on there. I like it. Okay. So, moments that you feel are metrically strong within this 13-ish beat cycle, and why, if any? Yeah.
Like two spots, but one stronger than the other. The ooh, the higher note there, it's also longer duration.
Yep.
For the most part, sounded stronger. I feel like in some of the, like sometimes it didn't line up as strongly, and it was like almost wanted to be a beat to the next beat. But then the sort of agua for sure, that felt really.
The first agua or the second agua?
The second, sorry.
The second agua. Okay.
Yeah, where the
interesting.
8 notes come back. I don't know. I feel the ve really connecting into that agua as a bar line.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and there's a parallelism there, right? If the beginning was downbeat-ish, then when the agua comes back a little bit later, maybe you'll automatically feel that parallelism. Okay, that was a downbeat, this is a downbeat as well. Good. The ooh, yeah, absolutely. So that's a long note, that's high in register. I completely understand that. Did anyone feel any other moments as metrically strong or something that's competing maybe with this interpretation?
The solo vocal line feels very unstable. Like it's like it's almost like a pickup the first two notes, but then you're kind of like, whoa.
The first note, like agua.
Agua cerito. But it's not like, I feel like it's not quite a pickup in the way that we would maybe perform a pickup to a downbeat. It's,
why not? Or
well, I think it's just because like you're trying to find the beat and you expect it to be
the first note of the solo line, but it doesn't necessarily feel strong, but it doesn't, it just feels more amorphous than what we're used
and
to.
we're like trying to, plug it into our Western understanding of it, so there might be something that we can hear,
Sort of on that, I kind of felt like agua was a bar of one rather than an upbeat two, a bar of. Because I couldn't, because I was sort of agua se rather than agua se, I couldn't feel the sort of directedness.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's an interesting word thing there as well. Aguacerito is not a common word. It's a small torrential downpour, like right? And the way that like word processing works, if you're just like a Spanish speaker who's hearing these words, at the beginning you would think that they're saying agua. Agua is accented. But then you hear the se, and you think that it's aguacero, where se is accented. But then you hear that it's aguacerito, and that's the accented. So it just kind of, if you speak Spanish, the accentuation as you're kind of processing the lyrics kind of keeps going forward and forward in this way.
Yeah, I think that lines up exactly with what I was thinking about. I mean, I could feel it as aguacerito and keep it in 3 the whole time. I could feel it as aguacerito like that. Anything I tried to put over it worked.
Yeah, okay, so compound kind of beat the entire time. Aguacerito, llove, aguacerito, llove. Okay, nice little.
Even hearing O and U as upbeats. O, E, O, U,
Nice.
Everything worked. It's like there was no predetermined meter.
Okay, so it's very malleable kind of melody that you could superimpose any meter onto it. Yeah.
So I had this problem with the they being a non-specific amount of time, that when it was shorter than 2 full beats, then I felt that as a pickup.
Yeah, that's super
shifting.
disorienting. Yeah, the shortening, the variable length of the ending. You have to kind of have a reset when the soloists come back in, or end up with a flipped kind of perception of the beat altogether again.
And then same thing, I want the oo to be strong, but sometimes it wasn't, and then the oh, they sing it so loudly because it's probably more in the comfortable range, so then suddenly that feels like a performance accent.
Yeah.
So then I'm going, okay, is that an upbeat?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's more of a question. I think you said these are rowing songs, right? So they're singing these as they're rowing. So I would think that if you're rowing, you'd want a really regular rhythm, right, to keep everybody together. So how is it that we've got these points where the beats are longer? That seems strange to me, given where this is coming from.
That's a great question. As I mentioned, there's a lot of rain in the region, as also I think the songs maybe imply. They're not calm rivers. That's the best explanation that I have. So if you're on water, I think there will be some fluctuation in time that's inherent in that. I don't know. I asked people about that specifically. There isn't much to be said about it. About what is metrically stronger. There's a bit more of a consensus, it seems, but about why there's this kind of microtiming thing, or slight lengthening, slight shortenings. I don't know. The music's alive, so why should it have to be so metronomic? But yeah.
I had a similar question of thinking of rowing a boat, that you would want things that naturally divided into groups of 2 in some way for pairing, right? For rowing.
Yeah.
I haven't rowed a lot of boats, but many times I've done it, I found it worked best if we were thinking in pairs.
That's interesting.
Just from like the practical element.
But it would be fun. But yeah, so there could be like an embodied kind of switching back and forth in from cycle to cycle. And then the next time it would be flipped, if you're thinking about it that way. I don't know. That's the thing. There's no videos of this because this was pre-video recording times. There's some recordings of it that are made on land of like ethnographic recordings from the 1960s, but that's the earliest recordings that we have, and they're not on the rivers themselves. And all of these are commercial remakes of these tunes that have been taken away from their original context. So I don't have a great answer to these questions, but they're really good questions.
I'm guessing it's a very windy river.
Very what?
Windy.
Windy river.
So the 1, 2, if you're trying to go in a straight line, yes, 1, 2. But if you're steering a boat,
then you're not.
and it's curving a lot, you're shifting where you're putting the oars all the time to get around, navigate. So maybe that would.
Given that we know some things about music in the region in general now, specifically there are moments where you use scale degrees 1, 3, and 5, and there are other moments where you use scale degrees 5, 7, 2, and sometimes 4. Maybe let's look at this and think if we can put our harmony hats on and think about it in that sense. Where would something metrically strong be if we are taking harmony as the thing to be listening for? So let's find that. Give this another listen, thinking with harmony on.
Aguacerito llover, oh, oh, y ve, aguacerito llover, aguacerito llover, oh, oh, y ve, aguacerito llover, allá arriba en aquel alto, oh, oh, y ve, aguacerito llover, hay un palo de caimito, oh, oh, y ve, aguacerito llover.
Where would the first harmonic change be? And actually, let's take a step back. If we're thinking in a key, because it is diatonic, the tuning is the tuning. Sorry?
B minor.
B minor-ish, yeah, it's B minor-ish. So what harmony do we start on if we're B minor-ish? 5, yeah, we start arpeggiating a 5-7 upward. When does it change, or when do you feel that it changes? On ve, yeah, I think so. Because you feel that the ve is a beat. Not the D right afterwards, the little 8th note afterwards. So, but that D cannot be a part of the 5-7 anymore, and we're just arpeggiating here. All the genres from the region, you're arpeggiating this thing, and you're arpeggiating this other thing. There's not so many non-chord tones in these styles. So in that case, yeah, the ve would be the metrically emphasized moment if we're thinking harmony. When's the next harmonic change? So if we've gone from dominant 7th to tonic on ve, when's the next harmonic change? On the next ve, yeah, okay, and it's a kind of parallelism there, and it's a longer note there. But that tells us that our aguacero right afterwards is probably not going to be a strong beat, unless you think that that's another kind of harmonic change. It's not 5/7 anymore. And then we get our last resolution platonic on our final ve at the very end of this cycle. So I'm not, sorry, was there a question?
I was just going to say the harmonic rhythm speeding up.
The harmonic rhythm is speeding up, yeah, okay. So it starts a little bit slower and then going towards the end of the phrase, we have a little bit more. So if we were to kind of barline it out a little bit, maybe aguacerito llover, oy ve, let's see, aguacerito llover, and those would be relatively evenly spaced beats. And then you'd have something else. So let's try conducting along with that. That would be kind of a 3-beat measure at the beginning, followed by 2 4s, followed by a kind of a 2 that leads back into the 3 again. Let's try that out. I have a different notation of it over here, I think.
Aguacerito.
Sorry. Or actually, yeah, okay. Let's give it a listen, trying to conduct along in that sense. See if you can hear it this way. I didn't put this into the slides and now I'm regretting it, but I interviewed a musician a couple of years ago and I talked to him a lot about this piece. And I asked him, what are you feeling basically? And he was by himself and he's a drummer, so he was accompanying himself on the drums. He goes, aguacerito llover, ooh, oh, like he starts playing on the ve. And he does play 4 full, 8 notes at the end of the whole thing, making it a 13 beats actually. I didn't include that here, but maybe if we kind of open up that PowerPoint and listen to that. But let's give it a listen, try and feel 3 and then a bunch of 4s, then a 2 and then a 3 again.
Aguacerito llover, hoy ve aguacerito llover. Aguacerito llover, hoy ve aguacerito llover. Allá arriba en aquel alto, hoy ve aguacerito llover. Hay un palo de caimito, hoy ve aguacerito llover. Cada vez que subo y bajo, hoy ve aguacerito llover.
Can you guys hear it that way? Can you feel it that way? Yeah. Okay, cool. So now it's, what are your thoughts about this? How did it feel? Anything that kind of stood out to you differently with this interpretation? Yeah.
I think one thing that throws me off just a little bit sometimes is because the response comes in feels so strong when all the voices come in that thinking of that as a second beat feels a little unnatural. But like I could still make myself hear it, but it's definitely not my natural inclination.
Yeah. Is it the same issue that we had before with the hypermeter thing? No. When the chorus comes in, is that metrically strong or is that metrically weak? It's the same kind of issue, just at a smaller level and more irregular kind of situation here. I mentioned that this is poetic stuff based on octosyllabic lines. My hypothesis about the hypermeter in a lot of these genres is that they're generally end accent. If we're looking at octosyllabic lines here, aguacerito llover, let's take it to basically octosyllabic. That's our first octosyllabic line. Aguacerito llover at the end is our other kind of quasi-octosyllabic line. If we take that to be an end accented thing, the llover would be the accented moment. And that's where the rhymes happen. Those of us, I'm not showing you guys the lyrics right now, but the rhymes always happen on this particular beat in the kind of poetic meter that's going on. So they're making the kind of, my interpretation is that the accented, the rhymed syllables are metrically accented as well, and that aligns with the harmonies and then aligns with the ends of the phrases. And so there's end accentuation and harmony and kind of rhyme scheme seem to be the things that are controlling the interpretation of the meter here, at least from what I got from Matthew Lopez. He's a musician who I interviewed. There's also a bunch of arrangements of this tune that are metrically regularized. None of the arrangements are 13 beats. It's stretched out to 16 in a really weird way. It's like, aguacerito llover, hoy ve aguacerito llover. And that's what the National Symphony Orchestra of Colombia, and they got a really famous singer, Pacific Colombian singer, to sing it, and it sounds ridiculous. but clearly, still that interpretation, the harmonic changes are metrically strong, even though the rest, the ending is changed so much. I saw a question or a couple hands.
Yeah, it was just a really quick question about, because you mentioned the rhyme scheme and how you're thinking of the strong part of the hypermeter is like the rhymed part, and I feel like I always think of the rhyme is at the end of something rather than the beginning of something. So
So, I think that's a great question. You must know. Joe Strauss and Rebecca Moranis have been doing some work on meter, perceived meter in read poetry. And actually their conclusion, even in English poetry as well, is that although yes, the rhyme is at the end of the line, but readers will emphasize that, and that seems to be, if you're hearing poetry metrically, the downbeat. So actually it translates over the English poetry into Spanish poetry. I don't know about other languages, but it seems to be the case here. Yeah, sure.
I had the same observations here.
Oh,
same
cool.
with the rhyme scheme with the
Yeah. Cool. My interpretation then, based on talking to the musician, these other arrangements, and just knowing that harmonic changes tend to be metrically strong in general, is this kind of interpretation, which of course has irregular, the beat is regular-ish, you know, there's a weird stuff at the end of the cycles, but above that, there's this irregularity going on here. And I do consider that irregularity to be metrical. I know that I mean, Trevor and Jocelyn got into a bit of something about it yet. But 3s and 2s are metrical because 7, 8 exist, right? And you're not feeling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's either 3 plus 2 plus 2 or 2 plus 3 plus 2, and you'll like strongly feel it in one of those ways, probably. So that there is this kind of 3s and 2s, you know, they can be metrical. In most scenarios, I would say that's my opinion. Hot take, I guess. All right. So yeah, this is my interpretation of this irregular thing. Aguacerito llove. Here is another one. Again, I'll do a show of hands. Who would like to do this kind of transcription-y exercise thing? And who would not like to do this transcription-y exercise? Let's just do it by ear, and just for the meter parts. So first, let's listen to this. This is another Canto de Boga. This is an older one, recorded in 1978, I think. Yeah, do not download or distribute this audio file because yeah, it's an archival recording. This is, well, let's give it a listen and see if you can entrain to any sort of pulse that's regular and faster-ish, and then see if you can group those pulses into something maybe less regular, a little bit slower than that. So let's get this on listen. Some of the endings were rushed in a similar way. 2 of the endings were rushed in a similar way that Aguacerito llove was. All right, any thoughts? Were you able to find a steady fast pulse? Fast-ish pulse most of the time? Yeah. Okay, fast-ish pulse most of the time. How were you able to go slower than that at all into some sort of pattern? Shall we try listening to it a little bit more? Yeah, let's do that. I think this is fast pulse that's regular. Okay. Any ideas? You guys, there was entrainment there, right? Because you guys knew when the boom was going to happen, and I think you guys knew when something smaller was going to happen too. It's just the counting aspect of it is maybe throwing us a bit, yeah.
It reminded me of the Bill Monroe government mystery, where there was these extra half measures or extra beats, right? So mostly groupings of 2, and then occasionally, I always filled them as a grouping of 3 rather than an extra half measure. That sort of thing. Yeah.
Interesting, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the 3s became apparent when there was like a long note and a short, and I started to feel the meaning of 3, but of course you don't know that until retrospectively.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I should have put a 3 there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that definitely worked with, well, everything works with 3s and 2s.
Everything works with 3s and 2s. Pattern of 3s and 2s? Lucero de la mañana, lucero de la mañana, de todo el día. No me recordaste, como no me recordaste. I'll do it again. Is it mostly 3s or mostly 2s? Mostly 3s, okay. How many 3s and how many 2s per kind of pattern? Anyone believe about it? Yeah.
3, 2, 3, 3.
3, 2, 3, 3. I think so.
It starts on.
Yeah, it doesn't. Let's ignore the pickup. Da 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 dun dun dun. Da dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, dun dun. Yeah, so, okay, so 3, 2, 3, 3. How does that feel? Does that feel okay? I'm doing it, a little more metronomically than, yeah.
I feel it like ba-da-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum.
Ah.
So I'm feeling mostly 2s and an occasional 3s.
Interesting. I like that. Okay, cool. Yeah. Simple solution, just add some stuff to the end. Yeah, that's the crooked kind of solution, right? Yeah, okay, awesome. How many though is 3 plus 2 plus 3 plus 3? 11. Yeah, it's basically 11, sometimes rush, sometimes, with more rubato, less rubato, but basically 11. It's what I say sounded like the tune, right? More economic, yeah. Oh, I thought your head was up. My bad. Okay. So these 3s and these 2s. Let's try to conduct along. Why am I choosing those 3s and those 2s and that 2 rather, instead of some other grouping of 3s and 2s or your interpretation? And let's think about things that we've kind of learned about these genres in this region in general as we're thinking about this. a tough one, right? Yeah. This is why the transcription exercise, don't listen to it. The transcription exercise I find helps because if you can't hear, you can see these kind of regular harmonic changes. Lucero de la mañana, and that's the end of the octosyllabic phrase. Lucero de la mañana, de todo el día. And there's these big, the ends of all of the octosyllabic phrases seem to be emphasized in this kind of 11-8 interpretation with, whatever groupings of 2s and 3s we said. I think it's 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 2 in this kind of barring. Yeah, all of these harmonic changes are on felt downbeats and align with the ends of the phrases, which also are the rhyme scheme that you can see in the lyrics that we have here. Also the hyper downbeat when you knew when the bass drum was going to hit. That's the rhyme, right? Lucero de la mañana, lucero de la mañana, claridad de todo el día, cuando no me recordaste, como no me recordaste, cuando vibra el alma mía. And so it's the accentuation, or the rhyme scheme rather, that gets the accent with the help of the bongo drum at the end of each of these kind of longer cycles. But yeah, you could feel it any other number of ways, just, clarifying, I'm hearing it this way because, start simple with a 2/4 pattern and, I'll change it at the end. But with this knowledge that we now have of the region, thinking about the octosyllabic phrases and the rhyme scheme and the harmonic changes helps us understand that this is probably what is conceptualized a little bit as metrically strong, or felt as metrically strong. Any questions about this before, how much time do we have? Because I thought that I was not going to go until 12, but time flies when you're having fun. So any thoughts about, these meters? Yeah.
Do they know if there's different songs for different rivers or regions, or do they kind of share them between different tribal groups? Like, how are these?
It's not a tribal group thing. This is not indigenous repertoire.
Okay.
It's Afro-diasporic primarily.
Right.
Based on Spanish poetic traditions. Not that I'm aware of. What I do know though is that there seem to be stock melodic schemas, kind of like there were with fugas, and those are kind of stretched out and compressed in different ways to give rise to different meters. There's another one, I didn't put it on the slides, I'm not regretting it again, but there's another bunch that seem to be really, really similar in melodic schema, but they're kind of stretched out differently. So there's one that's super regular that's, oh god, how does it start? But it's what one could call like a totally regular 6/8. So some of the kind of syllables are stretched out or compressed in different ways to give rise to different kind of metric interpretations. So there are these different melodic schemas, and the kind of lyrics are improvised, the poetry is improvised, but the resulting thing is different in every performance, even of the same kind of song with the same kind of refrain lyrics sometimes come back. Response lyrics rather sometimes come back. Yeah, any other questions? Yeah.
How would your students do with this?
I have not assigned this particular thing as a transcription exercise. What we did is something kind of like we did here, where listen to it a little bit, see if anyone can feel some sort of regularity and start to entrain. And we talk about it yet. I haven't assigned the transcription part of it. I don't know if I will. Yeah. What I did for this class, the 20th century classes, I would give them listenings every week, and they would have to say some things about it. And they had the option to transcribe if that would help them communicate what they're trying to say about the piece. But not a lot of them did the transcriptions when they had the option not to. Right? So yeah, this didn't come up in this, yeah. How do you think they would do? Not so well. A lot of listening. Yeah. I have it here as broken down into like, first figure out approximate rhythmic relationships between the things. Figure out the pitches as well. You could figure out scale degrees instead. And then from there, think about, once you have it all written as like one big thing, think about whether any of those moments are stronger than others, why, and so on. Yeah.
So, and I know this is kind of just a limitation of our notation, but we are saying these are all integer ratio relationships. Like the 8 notes are all half as long as the quarter notes, but we did experience a little bit of that push and pull. Is that like
we did.
Integral to the performance, and or something that's like, oh, that was just rubato, kind of like this idea of.
Well, I think rubato. Yeah, I mean that's how it works in a lot of Western classical music as well. There are these pushes and pulls constantly, right? We're not necessarily requiring it to be grid. It's just because we're in unfamiliar territory. I think that we latch onto those irregularities more because we just don't know what we're listening to.
I guess are they like critical at those specific moments and intentional, or just a result of?
They are not regularly irregular, if that's your question.
Yes. Yeah.
So you notice at the end of this, sometimes it was rushed at the end, sometimes it was not rushed at the end. In Agua Cerito Llové, similarly, it's sometimes a full 13 beats, other times it's 12.6 beats or something like that. And there are some other moments in other songs that have a bit more variability. That's actually really helpful, just in my research more than in my teaching, is what's structural and what's expressive. If you can hear something consistently across several repetitions of it, and it's something if you measure it and go that far, it's consistent across all of this stuff, then probably it's intentional. And if you're going farther, maybe there's a metricity associated with that, and people are trained to something because it's so regular. But if there's moments that are a little bit, it could be this or it could be that, then maybe that's not so important, and it could be more expressive and that kind of thing. Cool. So that's something of the irregular meter section. Again, throughout this whole thing, we're drawing metric grids and thinking about it in these different ways, groupings of 2s and 3s at different levels. And when we get to irregular meters, you have 2s and 3s at the same metric level. Sometimes 3 8 notes, sometimes 2 8 notes. And yeah, you would have established that. All right. Not break, we already took a break. All right, now we would get to rhythmic dissonance and polyrhythm type stuff. I think I'll probably zoom through this so we have time to talk a little bit more. But let's do this. So this half of the room over here, join me. On whatever system. Okay, keep going. Actually, I'm kidding, don't keep going. Now you guys do. Yeah. Okay, great. You know your parts? Let's put them together. I'll count again really fast. 8 notes. But the total. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, great. What are we singing right now? 3 against 2, and what melody are we singing right now? Yeah. I think that's what we were singing. If I hadn't messed up the counting thing, maybe it would have been more precise and we've heard that a little bit more. Yeah, okay, so it's a 3 against 2 polyrhythm, and if we had listened to the melody and the notes a little bit more, we would have known we're singing a common song there. Okay, when we're talking about rhythmic dissonance, I talk about it as there's kind of 3 different ways to think about polyrhythms. So there's an additive way to think about it. This is basically following Harold Krebs, where you're thinking about it as a fast pulses grouped in different ways. This is Harold Krebs' term in rhythmic dissonance. So what is the additive way of thinking about this? What's the smallest pulse, I guess, that is shared between the two? The biggest pulse, rather. Yeah, 8 notes, so 2 8 notes versus 3 8 notes is how you would think about it if you're thinking about it in an additive way. The second way to think about it is divisive, thinking about it as a larger unit, which is divided in different ways. That's, I think, the way that's familiar to most musicians. And in this case, it's flipped. Now, the top one is 3, because there's 3 units within the span of 6, and the bottom one is 2, because there's 2 units within the span of 6. So these two are kind of inversionally related, additive. You're thinking about a small unit and grouping them together, and divisive, you're thinking about it as a polyrhythm, a big unit that is subdivided differently, and yeah, those will always be inversionally related. And there's a third way to think about this, which is that the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts. Yeah, I presented it as a polyrhythm, and that's the first thing that you said, but if you were just singing Carol of the Bells from the get-go, you wouldn't think it's a polyrhythm, you would think it's Carol of the Bells. So in that case, the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts. I should probably think of a better term for that, like additional, maybe. Yeah. Sorry?
Composite.
Composite, yeah, composite, exactly. Okay, so the composite rhythm, because if you're thinking of a 4 against 3 polyrhythm, you can think about 4 against 3, or you can think pass the goddamn butter, and then you know the composite pattern, and there happens to be a 4 against 3 kind of thing going on within that. All right. Let's imagine that you didn't have that second quarter note. It would still be in dialogue with a polyrhythm. That second quarter note is kind of implied, even if you don't have that there. All right, so let's get into some of the weird stuff briefly that you might hear in some of the Pacific Colombian music. Weird stuff. Okay, what do we have first in the lower register of the marimba? Ostinato, right? Bum, 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 bum. We've heard that plenty of times. And then the upper register comes in and it starts doing its improv, and we're like, whoa, what's going on with this improv? Transcription of the improv that we have here. And let's give this another listen, just of this short section. All right, let's unpack it. If you're thinking about this additively, spoilers. If you're thinking about this well, actually, let's take this rhythm first. What kind of stream is implied, even if not all of them are played? Eighth note. Okay, great. So we have an eighth note kind of thing happening here. What stream is played explicitly in the upper part?
16. Is each of them played explicitly? Dotted eighths, yeah, they're just notated a little bit weirdly because they're going over the bar line, but that's all like 3/16 notes tied together, or dotted eighth note. So we have a kind of dotted eighth note thing against an eighth note thing. What's the slowest thing that fits within both of these? Now I'm looking for 16. Yeah, 16 notes into both of them. And so if we're thinking about this in a grouping dissonance kind of way, these are groupings of 2s, and those are groupings of 3s over there. But you have to be thinking really fast to be thinking in a 16th note. I don't think it's actually even metrically possible. It might be a little bit too fast. But for the sake of calling it a grouping dissonance, there's a grouping of 3, that's this kind of notation, grouping of 3 against a grouping of 2 that we have over there. We're going to learn to do this if we have time, okay? This is a thing not only in marimba parts, but it's really common in vocal lines as well. Here it's notated a little bit differently, but here's the Kununa Macho part, and the melody of this song. Let's give it a listen. Okay, it's a thing. Now let's think about it divisively. In a normal thing where you have beats of 6/8, if you subdivide it, and you wanted this kind of, we said it was a grouping of 3 against grouping of 2, you could flip the conception of it into a polyrhythmic conception, and that would be 3 against 2, but these are the 3s and these are the 2s, rather than these being the 3s of the 2s. Make sense? Okay. So if we're subdividing this,
you can subdivide this larger unit of the beat, the dotted quarter note, and go da 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 da. That's okay. We can always do that. We know how to do that. The issue here, of course, is that it doesn't align with the downbeat, does it? You have a displacement dissonance as well if you're taking Krebs's terminology. So instead of dividing starting on the downbeat and on the second beat, we're subdividing on the third eighth note and on the sixth eighth note and dividing that span into 2 instead. Let's give it a shot. Anyway, this is basically what it would sound like if we're doing a uno macho pattern and screw this up, but I mean, try really hard not to. And that's a downbeat. What we're going to do now is try learning it. First, let's learn, without notation, just the melody. This is going to involve learning the music or the melody in one meter and then kind of superimposing that onto another meter. That's how I was taught it. But if you're born and raised singing and listening to this music, you probably just kind of know as a template, as a schema, where it's supposed to fall. So let's try this out. I was thinking it wrong, but repeat after me. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Okay, now let's add our U and our E. I'll do the whole thing. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Nice, okay. Now let's emphasize some of these with our hand. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Let's keep doing that a little bit. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Okay, these are the open tones, the chord of the porque. So this is weak metrically, but right now we're thinking of it as strong, just like this. Let's do that a couple more times. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to keep tapping, and I'm going to slow it down actually. And now we're going to subdivide this into triplets. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Mañana me voy de Guapi. All right, now I'm going to remove one of the triplets in the left hand. I'm going to do this by myself, and then we'll see if it works first, and then I'll maybe ask you guys to do it. So, we're doing this instead, the uno macho pattern. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Hey, all right, you guys can join. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Couple more times. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Maybe swinging a little bit now with my vocals, I apologize. Maybe we all know. Okay. Now let's try to flip our perception so that this note, not this note, is metrically strong. Porque, 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 porque. Mañana me voy de Guapi. Yeah, we really swung that. So okay, let's keep going. Mañana me voy de Guapi. I'm messing up. Let me try again, and then you guys can join. Actually, if anyone feels like they really got it, let me hear it. But okay. If you guys did that, actually that was really well. And you guys speak or get. This is kind of crazy. Anyway, we could take a long time doing this. Does anyone feel like you kind of got it or want to give it a shot for everyone? Anyway, it's crazy. Yeah, so this is what that would look like. It could be a fun exercise. But this rhythm
Tocang bambu
is a
kuning,
thing.
walaho, carajo.
Notated a little differently. It feels kind of like a swung thing against it, like kind of a slightly late kind of thing going on there. If you listen to it in isolation, and as we just did when we were learning the Mañana de Hoy de Guapi, you might notice that it kind of starts to morph into a duple pattern if you hear it. Dun 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 dun. Like at first you're hearing it dun 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 is soon what it becomes in the mind. And yeah, musicians talk about this a lot. I don't know if we have time to talk about how musicians talk about it, but it's like a trick that's played on listeners quite a lot. The clever kind of musicians will use it in all sorts of interesting ways, especially nowadays when they're kind of learning this in a different sort of setting. I don't think we have time to talk about it much more because I want to get into like questions and discussion. But this stuff is here if you want to talk about it. This is Hugo Candelario talking. He's the guy who I said is the most kind of famous Urura musician, marimba player, currently alive, and he talks about it as like, yeah, this is the rhythmic venom of the genre, because you can so easily just kind of sway, if you don't know what's going on, you can sway your metric interpretation into something that's just like offset entirely. Okay, I think we won't look at this then. But you can listen to it later. Okay, some things that I wanted to think about is, today obviously we were thinking about this in like a really, really Western-centric way for a good chunk of the time. Is there a way that you guys can think of that you might include this music or alter some of the very notation-heavy assignments that I have here and input them in some sort of way for different populations of students, or for the same population just without so much emphasis on notation, right? Maybe you guys can like, if you guys have thoughts, I'd love to hear them, but maybe it'd be best if you guys like talk about this a little bit amongst yourselves for like 2 minutes and think about that. Or does anyone have any thoughts like right off the bat that they would like to share? I'm just a little low on time, so maybe we should just kind of talk about it. Yeah.
I find it like everywhere I've taught first semester students, when you suddenly bring in something metrically unusual to them. And this last example where you get to get them feeling these triplets and then try to have them follow the voice, which is split in half but doesn't start on one. I think they would lose their minds and they would love it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no need for notation for that.
Exactly, yeah, just
learn the
try to
song and then
feel-
flip your brain, yeah. Cool.
For me, there's so much resonance between what you're talking about today and what Jocelyn was talking
Yeah,
about.
that's
I think this idea of multiple interpretations, and I think the sort of grid notation or like X dash notation or whatever would be an amazing way to do this without using Western notation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel a lot of resonance between what we were talking about.
Previously we were tracking using lyrics as well, and like just underlining, highlighting what lyrics feel emphasized, and then sort of talking about meter in relation to the syllable.
Yeah, you should be writing it down. I'll remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's generally a tendency for like some of these more complex rhythm things to come in like theory 4.
Yeah.
And like for most of the time I don't see why we can't do that in theory 1. I mean, sometimes it gets a little mathematically complicated, but if you're not working with the notation,
Yeah.
I mean, just having them embody it and do these things I think is helpful, so then you don't need the notation. But it's like, we can't say the polyrhythm word until like post-tonal.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah.
And most of the students in the schools I teach at, about half of them don't read music when they start theory 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I spend a lot of time trash talking our notation system because it's so difficult to learn. And it wasn't nobody made it. It was built organically, which is difficult. So I would love to get to show them that transcription of yours and say, this music sounds great, look how dumb it looks, right? The notation system doesn't work for it. It's completely opaque, but you can hear it and feel it, you know? Yeah.
Cool.
It's really exciting. I'm loving it.
Yeah, any other thoughts? How might this be used, not used?
I know that the world music class at Temple is a gen ed class, and I taught for many years, and I didn't do this, but the honors class version does timelines for African music, but it would work fine like this. Like they basically take a grid and they write their own timelines and then they perform it.
Yeah,
so
and it doesn't even have to be
like
in a grid. I was debating whether to talk about this, but if you guys know Guthrie Toussaint and some other people's work, kind of you see it around in a circle, where kind of like, well, exactly like kind of a set theory clock face, but the top is 1 rather than 0. And you can kind of draw the timelines and cyclic notations to show that it's recurring as a thing, and then you can kind of get away from notation in that way as well. Yeah, I think that would be really cool. Yeah.
I can also see this being quite a constructive way of doing a bit of a gotcha for students, because when they come in, they often go meter equals time signatures, and I'm sort of imagining giving each of them a little slip as they come in with like one of your ostinati written in one of the many time signatures, and then we all listen and they go, yes. And then you say like, now look at me.
Wait, I love that. That's
because
great.
it's like a nice, it's because they are so.
Game 1, yeah.
Well, they're so notate. You know, I'm sure we will do this. You talk about a bit of music, and they just go, give me the sheet of paper. I'm gonna put my head down.
Yeah.
And this is a really nice way of redirecting their attention to these sort of. It's sort of stealth cognition, you know.
I'm wondering, as you've done your transcription and studied this music, I mean, it seems to me from all this that you've got these, they're not random. Even if like there's an improvised pattern that's going against the implied meter, whatever is being done is systematically done, right? It's not, it fits somehow within the paradigm. So I feel like that could be something also that could be transferred to the students if you set it up that way, you know.
The improvisatory thing, but with a particular style kind of thing?
Right, or have them think about, I mean, that could be something where you could, and you could, you know, depending on the ability of the students, even get to the really complicated polyrhythms that go against even the meter. But if you have them, like, if you give them certain categories and work on it with them, then they can sort of choose their own path through. You know, you can sort of set up this feeling of one particular meter, but then give them the possibility of going against it, which again ties very well into the presentation we have.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So we do have, another 9 minutes. So yeah, related, I was hoping for any questions or thoughts that you guys have about. I have a question for you guys that you guys can think about.
So kind of a question on it's like the nature of knowledge and like methods of learning. A lot of this discussion presupposes that at the lowest level of subdivision that there's isochronous. And I wonder how the people who perform this music and teach this music natively, how they conceive of that.
That's a great question. Yeah, after these weeks, these are the first 4 weeks of classes. Afterwards, we talk about microtiming in the very next unit. The very, very fast, like 16th note, never conceptualized. So that means that they're not thinking about this weird polyrhythm, the rhythmic venom, as an additive thing, more of a divisive thing, or as a composite pattern. Composite?
I'd say composite.
Composite pattern. In that sense. But I mean, there is isochrony definitely at the beat level because people are dancing all the time, or like nominal isochrony, basically. 8th notes, things get a little bit mushier at the 8th notes. I think you guys heard the shaker being really like simple tupely sounding at some points, and different instruments and the texture are doing some different things. I mean, they're not thinking about it in this way, right? Dance steps of dance music, there's a groove underlying the whole thing. So the isochrony at the really fast levels, not talked about.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of like son clave, rumba clave, that when you hear those from someone who's actually from Cuba, that there's this swing to like the second and the three.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to describe that to us or how to conceptualize it.
Yeah,
We were talking about the samba also, right? That same kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a thing here too. While this is like a nominally isochronous thing that we were talking about in the rhythms of your pattern in the marimba, it's not actually isochronous, and I've done some microkinetic study on it where the third one is actually just a little bit longer than the rest of them. It's not dun 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 dun, but it's kind of dun 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 dun. So there is definitely a microtiming thing going on, and it's different depending on which player is playing. Some of the more modern urban versions try to keep like super isochrony to like try to listen the most kind of thing, but traditionally it's a swung thing rather than like a really strict isochrony in this pattern as well. Yeah, so the microtiming thing is huge. It's just it's difficult to get really into. I use a lot of writer Polak's. His article has a lot of audio files where you can really hear like, it's basically 16th notes, but you can hear that they're not even 16th notes. And so that's a way for students to like, start getting into Audacity or whatever, and like see, oh yes, this is like a particular microtiming pattern. And you could do that with this kind of thing as well.
Is it like systematic and intentional, or is it kind of haphazard and depending on the performer?
Well, the intention is, difficult to ascribe, but it seems consistent among different musicians. So certain musicians will microtime more heavily than others consistently. And it happens more in Curulao than it does in Cuba. It's more swung in Curulao than it is in Cuba. The swing stuff, it's so hard to talk about this. There's some simple examples in the Polak. If you hear this in isolation, like in the beginning of this song where it's by itself, you can really easily, if you're comfortable with Audacity, measure each of these and see that some of them are longer than others. And you can even kind of perceive that. That's actually, we have 5 whole minutes. Let's give a listen to this opening again. I'm gonna tell you guys that the player who's playing this guarajo, he microtimes heavily on the third note of this rhythm per measure often. So that one's going to be just a little bit longer than the other notes.
Toca un bambuco viejo, guarajo, carajo.
Yeah, maybe in the very first opening measures you can kind of hear there's a slight lengthening there. And obviously this is a transcription, but it's understood that like they're using the dosillo, it's called dosillo pattern, that's conceptualized as nominally isochronous, although in practice it is swung in this microtiming kind of way. Let me go back to here. Any other thoughts or questions? Yeah.
The way you're talking about these sort of displaced pseudo-isochronies, it reminds me a lot about how I've been taught the piano to play polyrhythms.
Yeah.
It's never from the bottom up, and it's never mathematical. It's always get right. Yeah. It's parallel kind of practice. It seems interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
And for drummers, sometimes I think it's the opposite.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Depending on the practice, like thinking for marching band, right? It's very much the mathematical precision.
Yeah.
Well, these are some like ideas or questions that I had. Some of the big issues I wanted to come back to now a few times where I'm still experiencing some discomfort. Maybe you guys are too about like, the use of a lot of these Western concepts and kind of throwing them out. But I haven't found a better way to. It's kind of you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You can either include a whole bunch of repertoire and there's 2 or 3 things that you can do with that. You can either, I guess you can not talk about it, that's thing 1. You can talk about it and like really dive into it and do it like in the most knowledgeable way possible, bring in experts, that would be great. Or like really deep dive into research and get into the like nuts and bolts of the specific practices, but then my sense is that it starts to become a bit more of a music appreciation class. Or you can do it the imperfect way and say, okay, there's this shared vocabulary that we are going to talk about it in this room, even if it is not used outside of this room to describe this particular music, and bring in a wide range of repertoires as wide as you would like or as comfortable as you feel, and you know, try your best to make do with it. There's no perfect solution, but it's yeah, that's kind of how I approached it with this particular class. Anyway,
I mean, I have a couple of thoughts on that.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like some context is definitely required, especially if you think about the rowing songs. Kind of really makes much more sense if you think about it in terms of like it's where it's being performed. So I think you can't completely take it as an abstraction, right? Even like the idea we just talked about, the swinging of the rhythms. Again, it's very related. You kind of have to know who the performers are, why they're doing what they're doing, and then not take it as literally because of that reason. So I feel like ultimately it does boil down to a bit of a music appreciation approach.
Yeah.
Which I think for somebody who's not coming from that tradition is probably okay. Just to be able to, I mean, I'm actually grateful to you now because I can more understand what's going on in some of this music, and I can listen to it and actually get into it. And I'm okay not having, been in its original context. I could pursue that further if I wanted to. That gives me that option, which I think is a good feature of this approach. Or I can be inspired by it and use it in other ways.
Any other final thoughts? I promise I'm going to keep you guys over. Yeah,
I think
last comment.
The musical appreciation moments in the theory core are great moments to relieve the grind of what is, for a lot of students, incredibly intimidating and difficult.
Yeah.
And they get to sit back and enjoy something. Like that's, it's nice if they get to smile once in a while in theory class.
That's true. Something to remember. On that note, let's make our students smile and also have a good lunch. Yeah.
Well, just one final point is the cool thing is you can relate these because the two talks we had back to back, which is really cool. Like Olivia Rodrigo has something in common with some of these Hugo traditions, which is like you could talk about both of them in the same way. Yeah, it's cool.
And then you could make them smile when we talk about Bach also. Music appreciation.
All right, you guys, thank you so much.